I'm Alicia.
And I'm Maddie.
And welcome to the Fangirl Diaries, a podcast where we talk about our obsessions,
Reminisce about our teen icons,
and explore the books, movies, and shows that made us the incredibly nerdy 30-somethings that we now are. Hello.
Hi.
This is going to be a slightly excitable podcast. I know we're excitable all the time, but today we are doing probably one of the most defining obsessions for you and I possibly ever.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And that's a high bar.
Yeah.
And this podcast is just a list of our obsessions. So the fact that this one ranks so highly is important. We are doing Twilight. I know, I'm shaking with excitement for this. And we've already had to set some parameters.
Yep.
So that we don't make this a 3-day long episode.
Recording session, we're gonna have to bring in food, we'd have to have wine. No, we need to keep this sane.
Yep, we have specifically made sure that we are going to have dinner after this so that the podcasting itself is curtailed. And we are only going to talk about the first Twilight book and first Twilight film. Mm-hmm. Because for anybody who doesn't know, it is a saga.
It is a saga.
Not that it's referred to that way. It's not like the Twilight series or the Twilight books or the Twilight films. Like if you Google Twilight, it suggests to you Twilight Saga.
Yeah.
I don't know
Do you think we'll come back to each of the others individually or maybe as a group or something?
We'll see. I think that we are probably going to find that we slide into talking about some of the further ahead ones. So, if you're weird and you've only read book 1, I don't know who that would be, then be aware that there may be spoilers. This podcast is not spoiler free.
No.
And at some point I will give a sort of summary of Twilight. But when I was thinking about what that was, I also thought, legitimately, who does not know what this is?
Yeah, it definitely transcends just, it's not just confined within geeky culture. It went massively mainstream to the point where there's jokes and memes and people know the stuff. People know of Twilight even if they haven't seen or read it.
Yeah, this was the equivalent of a kind of cultural blockbuster of our teenage year. Some of the stuff that you and I were obsessed with is probably you, me, and 3 other people. It's us in a really niche corner of the internet. Twilight is one of the things that you and I love, but so did 9 million people.
Yeah.
So it is very much, and actually this was one of the obsessions that I was aware of us having that possibly for the first time tell me what you think, but brought us into conversation with the concept of the fandom for almost the first time.
Yeah, there were others, maybe Harry Potter. I think I got a bit into the forums and the podcasts and stuff way early on, but it was a different kind of fandom, Harry Potter. It was quite young and excitable, but Twilight fandom is another level.
You just did such a great face that really I think illuminates the Twilight fandom. That's right, the Harry Potter obsession was us and a load of people for whom it was good, clean fun.
Yes.
The Twilight fandom was hormonal, you started to get press stories about people sort of mobbing the cast, and it was almost like Beatlemania, or which we obviously were not around for, or the sort of footage you see of people being obsessive about Michael Jackson. It was that level of hysteria.
Yeah, and the concept of the book was targeted at teens, right? It was absolutely about teens and about romance, so tugging at those heartstrings and other things, but it wasn't, whereas, other obsessions had been more, as you say, clean.
So just to get a summary out of the way, although really I cannot believe that anybody is sort of exists in the modern world without at least a basic appreciation of the concept of Twilight. But Twilight is a book by Stephanie Meyer, released in 2005, where young girl Bella Swan moves to Forks, a part of extremely rainy, cold and dark Washington state. and finds herself drawn to fellow teenager, although a little bit older, Edward Cullen. Edward Cullen is mysterious. He's got sort of some strange traits about him. Could we call them powers? Powers start to exhibit themselves. And Bella really goes on what we could call a research project. It's really her equivalent of today's sort of piece of coursework. And she realises that Edward is a vampire. Dun, dun, dun. And they fall in love. and that is really the basic concept of book one. It then becomes and morphs into a whole saga. But as I said, we're going to park that for the purposes of today's discussion. So, Madeline, do you remember reading this book for the first time or getting a copy of this book?
I am pretty sure that you read it first.
Oh, I didn't think it was me.
I think probably you read it first and gave it to me.
Yeah, that does sound likely.
I definitely feel like I wasn't on the hype about it. As you said, I think we didn't get to it until maybe we knew already that there was going to be a film, and therefore we might have read it because of that. And I feel like it was one of these things that was passed around, and people were like, you should read this, you should read this. Yeah. And I think probably you got it first and gave it to me to read.
It's funny that I can't remember where I got that book from. I would put money on you giving it to me.
Well, maybe we just both heard about it.
Yeah. But even this concept of we had somehow picked up on this growing hysteria around this book is still surprising to me, because if anyone else brought it to our attention, we then very quickly eclipsed their interest in it and turned our little corner of the sixth form common room into the sort of Twilight museum / Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and there were definitely others of our friends that were also as obsessed. It was not just the two of us, it was a group.
Yes, it was our group.
Yeah.
it was our extended friendship group.
Yeah.
But even that, there were various things there are so many things that you and I are incredibly nerdy about that we know we really can't discuss with most other people, or we just lose their attention. Whereas Twilight, we managed to drum up a group of people to go to the cinema with. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just out of sort of, oh, we better go because Madeline and Alicia want to go. There was actual excitement on a wider level. But I definitely remember reading the book. I can't remember where I got it from. But I remember an almost bodily experience with this book. I could not believe what I was reading. It was like eating the best chocolate bar ever. And I remember these various images of, I remember going down to the kitchen in my house and feeling like this was a really seminal moment, holding the book and sort of presenting it to my mum as if I was presenting some sort of cultural artifact. I think I was palpitating or something. I went in there and said, Mum, you have to, this book, it's just everything. And just sort of spewed this hysteria at her.
So funnily enough, I also have a recollection about Twilight, the book, and your mum.
Oh no!
And I remember very specifically being probably at breakfast in your kitchen, where your mum had put out a beautiful spread, as she always did, and talking about Twilight. Maybe you'd given it to her and she'd read it, or maybe she just heard us talking about it. Don't remember exactly. And trying to explain to her why we were so obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. And I think it had come up because I think, we might be able to admit that in the grand scheme of literature, it might not be the greatest well-written piece of prose that has ever existed.
I think that's fair.
But we were trying to explain what it was that had got us in basically a chokehold. And we just and I remember saying to her that what Stephanie Meyer had done was constructed this character in Edward that just 100% was so compelling to our 16, 17-year-old minds. She basically created the perfect man in our brains. Yep. Whatever it was that we wanted at that age, was what she had created. And even if it's not the best, most well-written book in the world, to be able to create that, I think, is a skill that we should recognise and appreciate.
If only there was an award for that. But that is so true. And actually, to reference our age here is important because we noticed just before we started recording that there was about a 2-year lag time between this book being released in 2005 and it somehow making a transatlantic move to really hit us in the year sort of 2007 when we were in the sixth form. And that was when it really took off for us. And so a lot of my memories of it are wrapped up with that real 17-year-old experience. Our form tutor, do you remember Mrs. Forshaw?
Yeah.
And we should say for the record here, Mrs. Forshaw was like an Oxford graduate English teacher.
Yeah.
And she kept seeing us, holding these dog-eared editions of this book. And the cover itself is really striking. It's that the famous apple in the hands.
Yeah, it's very iconic.
And, if you see 3 girls with this, you're probably going to say, hey, girls, what is that you're all reading? So we had to we sort of explained our obsession with it to my mother. I definitely had a go at trying to explain it to Mrs. Fisher.
Oh, right.
For sure. And I would love at some point, it would be so interesting to almost ask what were parents at that time, what their understanding of the kind of Twilight explosion was, and when they read it, what did they think? I remember my mum reading it. She was absorbed. She had come to pick me up from the school car park.
Yeah.
And I could see the car there, but she hadn't seen me. And when I had to approach and knock on the window, expectantly for my taxi, and mum was absorbed in this book.
Amazing.
So clearly, you're right, it hit something for us. But I think also parents were maybe keen to see what it was that we were
I'm sure the mums also loved it. Although I don't think my mum read it, but I should ask her.
Has she not read it to this day?
I reckon probably not, but I should check.
That would be interesting to know. But you were spot on with it is about Edward Cullen, the reason that we are obsessed with this. Because Bella Swan, while she's unique in some ways, is not a particularly standout heroine, I would say.
No, she's meant to be bland so that you project yourself onto her and become the heroine in the story and you get to fall in love with Edward.
Yes, that's a very astute criticism there, Madeline. I feel
it's not necessarily a criticism. I think perhaps a
critique.
A positive.
Okay, so I think when we think about why was Edward it, and you're so right, he was it. Do we need to also identify that we were absolutely primed for this sort of literature because we were at an all-girls school. Our appreciation of boys was relatively limited, as it was. They weren't readily available.
It was at a distance.
Exactly.
Always.
Always. Yeah, that's right. We were appreciating from a distance. So this was merely another boy to appreciate from a distance. And we had the luxury of being pretty much the spot-on age group for these characters. Just as we were for Harry Potter, etc. The books came out for Twilight when we were that age, the age that the characters were. But yeah, at the same time, I think a lot of the magic of Edward Cullen, and almost the reason that Stephanie Meyer had to make him a vampire. And we should say, dear listener, again, if you are not familiar with Twilight, Edward Cullen is relatively old. He's hundreds of years old.
Of course, he's a vampire.
He's a vampire. He's a mythical creature. He is not a teenager. And what happened was the books had to almost explain that he was as old and ancient as he was in order to justify showing a 17-year-old boy who was actually great. Because Edward Cullen has a maturity, a sophistication, he is able to appeal to someone like Bella, who in herself she likes to read, she's interested in school, she's an intelligent character.
Yeah, I'd never thought about it like that, but you're right. It's like, these are all the traits that we want from a boy, but they can never have because they're a 16-year-old boy.
Exactly.
But he can have those traits because
he's old. Yes, there's something really messed up about that concept. But that was it. It was imagine if this book existed without Edward being from the 1900s or something. The believability factor would be scuppered because that kind of boy meets girl teenage fiction only really works when a boy is portrayed like a 17-year-old boy with all the sort of foibles that they have, whereas the character failings, if we may say, of Edward Cullen, even those are from a different kind of time.
Yeah, he's overprotective and kind of...
He's obsessed with weddings.
Yeah,
possessive. He's obsessed with marriage.
Yep.
Oh, dear.
Although we will have to come back to the kind of religious undertones at some point as a topic.
Oh, that's very much on this list. But yeah, why he worked. I mean, why else did he work? Is it just because he's described as so stunning and beautiful? And
the mystery as well, right? Mm-hmm. At that age, you just you kind of you want somebody who's different from those boys that you are seeing around, and the kind of the intrigue of this person that acts in a different way and is doing mysterious things, has mysterious powers. That intrigue is something you want to follow and you want to chase and you want to kind of go towards. And I think that was it. It was the like kind of what's going on, and I've got to find out. And also when I find out, I've got to have this person.
Absolutely. And it follows, the book is structured around Bella doing that investigative exercise.
Yeah.
It isn't that Edward one day just reveals to her that he's a vampire. She really gets it out of him by... finding that out in books and kind of confronting him about
going
it.
Through like historical documents and stuff. Yeah,
solving the mystery. But I think moreover, that whole setting, the whole structure of this book and a lot of the tropes it deploys are so enjoyably YA. Mm-hmm. And this is part of that, the uncovering the mystery, the mysterious boy, the mythical creature. And now Twilight is so ingrained within the whole YA piece that without going back and looking at lots of dates, I would struggle to remember whether it's Twilight that then spawned a lot of copycat literature, or whether Twilight just drew the best elements from that genre.
I think it's one of the earlier ones. I think along with The Hunger Games, which I think is roughly the same era, mm-hmm. I think those two kind of sparked that genre. And I mean, obviously there were books aimed at teenagers before that and older teenagers, but I do think that Twilight and The Hunger Games kind of defined the beginning of that genre.
Or that's certainly how it seems in my mind.
Yeah.
For sure. And our experience of it. Those are like key canon texts.
Yeah, and they're very different, right? So they're different types of YA, but they really define it as a whole genre, those two.
It's interesting, actually, this kind of quick sideline comparison between the two. And we know we're going to talk about Hunger Games separately. But like we've already discussed Bella as a heroine. But for me, the standout character of Hunger Games is Katniss.
Of course, yeah.
And I struggle to remember, really, the male characters.
There was like a triangle but you care about Katniss,
you care about Katniss, absolutely. Whereas in Twilight, you're right. It's Bella is the vehicle for you, the reader, to enter the text and to fall in love with Edward. But you're there for Edward.
Yeah.
So very different, but certainly kind of around the same time. But it does all those fabulous things, which is why I just think I enjoy it so much. Every trope that I want is there. So you have the removal of a teenager from her familiar environment to an unfamiliar environment. Mm-hmm. That new environment, Forks, is in itself semi-mystical. You've got the mist, the rain, all of this. You have the brilliant, such a trope of YA, the kind of absent present parent.
Yeah. That doesn't really kind of get in the way of the storyline because they are just kind of there as a prop, but then kind of give you some comedy and some a little bit of an obstacle when you need it. That kind of thing. Yeah,
it's brilliantly pitched. So that's right. We've managed to get... Bella has, she's no longer with her mother, who's in a different state, but Chief Swan provides exactly that. He's there enough for a bit of comic relief and a little bit of also parent-child tension when we need it. But otherwise, he's pretty absent.
She can just go wandering off for like the day and he doesn't care.
Absolutely. And yet, the book manages to extend our interest, I thought, and then this really comes across in the films, to a little bit more of a supporting cast. We're talking mainly about Edward and Bella, But we get the Cullens.
Yeah.
The whole bunch of them. The whole clan, the whole family. Book 1 introduces Jacob, who we won't really get into now because he doesn't really become a key player.
Not in
until
book
the
1.
later books.
Not in book 1.
He's set up in book 1, but then really becomes something later. But it does have the scope to make you care about a slightly wider group of people.
Well, the Cullens just seemed so cool, right? Mm-hmm. You've got this like group, and each of them has their own different power. And like as soon as you have something like that, like that's such a YA thing, right? It's like each one's got a different power, and you get to use it, and using those things helps them to like get to the end of the book successfully. Like, you know, it's this kind of setup that really works, and you get the individual characters and things. So I think that was always really fun, and I remember that vividly from the books, but. I think you mentioned that in the film, it's actually the school friends as well get quite a nice kind of supporting cast role.
Which, I prefer that in the film.
Yeah, I think that's done better in the film than it is in the books, as far as I remember. Like creating these like little individual characters like that are kind of at the high school and don't really know what's going on with Bella and Edward and are living this like normal life that's kind of adjacent to what's going on with the romance story. Yeah,
they provide really necessary context or contrast. I think in order to understand the old-fashioned and semi-mystical status of the Cullens, their behaviour and their speech and everything they do has to be offset against like your typical high school teenagers.
Yeah.
Her friend Jessica and all of these people. But I also prefer what's done with them in the films as well.
I think when we rewatched it a little while back, I said that like it feels like those friends are just existing in a different movie.
Yes.
It's like Bella is living in one movie and this like romance, high stakes vampire romance with this beautiful man, and they're living in like a teenage high school movie.
Yes, that is so interesting that you say, because I do prefer some aspects of the film, and I think it's wonderfully adapted, and I think the script is brilliant. So I was looking up, who does the script, etc., and I was reading about Melissa Rosenberg, and this is really the only time I'm going to get a little bit technical about this, because otherwise you and I don't really get into the technicality of this stuff. We're here to talk about why we loved it and our experience of it. But the screenwriter for Twilight had done before Twilight Step Up, and before that, I love Step Up too. And before that, The OC.
Oh,
I know. But
that's on the list.
That's on the list. These are all to be discussed separately. But I'm not surprised at all that the teenage friends and the high school setting was a little bit more sharply rendered. And some of their speech, some of their phraseology is so spot on. And so I always remember the film, they have an exchange where one of them says something like, I think Bella says to one of them, no, it's cool, zero weirdness. And just something like that's a little bit idiomatic. And I thought, somebody who really writes teenage dialogue.
Yeah, that's not come from Stephanie Meyer.
That's not no, Stephanie Meyer writes things like, and so the lion fell in love with the lamb.
Yes.
It's a completely different sort of register.
Yeah.
But I think that works incredibly well for the film. So let's really talk about the film. What is your memory of the film and it coming out and the build up to it coming out?
I think I remember a lot of talk around the casting, because obviously for Edward Cullen, Robert Pattinson had been in Harry Potter, right?
Yep.
So he'd been Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter, and I remember thinking, like, I think even back then we'd all like kind of had a bit of a crush on Cedric Diggory in the fourth film of Harry Potter.
He was like the hot person in Harry Potter.
Exactly. And so I think there was a bit that was like they've done that right. But I don't really remember much about Kristen Stewart. I guess from our perspective, she was probably a bit of an unknown.
100%. She was not on my radar. No. I learned her name for the first time.
Definitely.
In conjunction with Twilight.
Do you remember how and when we went to the cinema to see it?
Absolutely. But more than that, I remember, this is really going to jog your memory.
Yeah?
Do you not remember that we had a homemade wall calendar countdown.
We did.
Until the cinema
yes, I had
release
forgot.
date. We were so cool.
You're really dredging up the depths of how obsessed we were. Like, really, I'd kind of forgotten.
I think one of us made it out of the back of a sort of cereal box or something.
Yeah.
And we blue tacked it to our designated area of basically the bit of the sixth form suite that we had sort of colonised, our friendship group, that no one else wanted to come near, probably for this reason. And the countdown slowly became a work of art in and of itself, because we had affixed, like, you know, when they released the press,
the posters and the like promo shots and stuff.
We'd started to blue tack that around. We'd started to collage it, and there must have been about a couple of months to run. In fact, I know exactly what there was, because the film came out in November.
Yeah,
we would have started that school term in September.
Yeah,
and so I think that winter term was really defined by us becoming twihards in the most desperate sense, and trying to co-opt anyone else.
Is there
into this.
visual evidence of this countdown left anywhere? Are there any photos or...
I just know that there will be. That is the kind of thing that will resurface.
I hope so.
In my attic
I hope
or
so.
something. I know that is somewhere. And then I remember us taking it down when it was over and thinking, we must do this again for New Moon.
For the next one, yeah.
But yes, we all went to the cinema. It was one of our en masse outings. I'm positive we went on opening day.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And we will have gone to... In fact, we tried to go to the big cinema in Leicester Square. We weren't fast enough. That had booked out. So do you remember we went to one of the sort of subsidiary ones in one of the corners?
Oh, yeah, there's several cinemas in Leicester Square. Yeah,
and we thought, we'll make do with a smaller screen. we need to be a part of this on opening night. So I remember that. And I remember the trailer being released.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it was quite a beautiful trailer.
Yep.
The, like, atmosphere that it created really kind of... It cemented, like, what we enjoyed from the books, but also, like, visually really represented what the film ended up being. That kind of moody, kind of, like, grey-toned, but, like, intrigue feeling kind of the film.
It's interesting that you talk about, and I agree with you, the book not being particularly seminal in terms of its writing style. And yet the film, I would have to make a case for being... Like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's actually quite art house.
Fair.
I really... and it stands up. Like, when I rewatch the film, on the one hand, I'm rewatching it thinking, I love this. But I'm genuinely struck by several times when I think, this is really quite artistically done.
Yeah, there's only... Am I allowed to say a negative, or is this going to cause a tension?
I've got many negatives. I'm just saving them.
The only thing that I find frustrating about the film is the voiceover. That Bella kind of comes in right at the beginning with, like, essentially her diary as a voiceover, which feels a bit like somebody just reading the book at you.
Interesting.
And I feel like if you were going really art house, you can do a bit more show rather than tell situation. But other than that, when we're not doing voiceover, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And probably because I think the book is in first person, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's her voice. So I wonder whether that was a slightly misjudged...
It's a bit of a lazy way of doing a first person narrative.
Yeah. There are several detractors sort of from the film, but the cinematography is beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Like, whatever sort of filter is applied over that whole film is just delicious. You really get that sense of it being this sort of cold, icy, removed, otherworldly place. But there are things that sometimes I watch and I think, oh no, I just have to just close my eyes and pretend
Which are your
not in
ones?
the film.
Which are your ones?
I cannot bear the spider monkey scene.
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
It's terrible. That is terribly shot. I'm embarrassed for them both. I'm really embarrassed for them both. But in fact, some of those bits where the vampires use their powers a bit more, with one obvious exception that I'm going to say for my USP, feel slightly clunky. Probably because I don't think this had an enormous budget.
No, not at all.
At this time.
No. So in terms of like, special effects and stunts and stuff, they wouldn't have had masses to deal with.
Like, even the makeup on the Cullens looks bizarre.
Yeah, that's true. They look so caked in white. Yeah. And also because some of the actors for the Cullens are not like very pale people naturally.
Nope.
Like, at least Robert Pattinson is like pretty pale, so when you put more white on him it looks natural. Whereas is it Rosalie? Like, her features are quite dark anyway.
Oh, Nikki Reed is the actress, yes.
And so, she's a tan woman. So, like, making her look really white, it's just like... Also, they look super old and they're all meant to be going to school.
But the film really doesn't make it believable that this group of people were able to blend into society unnoticed.
No.
And that's a problem, because you, the viewer, have to think... oh gosh, what a reveal, what a revelation that, these people are vampires. Whereas there's that scene, for example, in the hospital when Dr. Cullen comes in and he just looks like he's been caked in sort of talcum powder.
Yes.
And I'm watching it thinking, no one notices that this guy's like definitely a vampire.
Yeah,
he is the
definitely
undead.
Something strange.
He is the undead.
And the other one that I was going to bring up as a slight cringe moment is the Edward smell thing where he's in the science class. And he smells Bella's blood for the first time. And he spends the whole class just seething with this weird look on his face, which is disgust and anger and bad smell face. And you're just if this was actually happening in real life, you'd just send him out of class and be what's wrong with you?
Oh, it's actually, once you open this gate and you start to identify that, like you said, the cringe moments, or the bits in the film that don't work, you really could go on and on. But at the same time, I loved the adaptation for this because it brought us so many set pieces that are now iconic, or that have, like you said, become memes, or are just used so much in internet culture. But really couldn't... In the book, it just doesn't do justice to the way that it ends up being shot. Yes. Everything from the Edward stopping the car with his hand, or the van with his hand, that's amazing. But also there are just some quite cool moments in the film. I love when they walk through the car park. He's got his sunglasses on. He's wearing some sort of Ray-Bans.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, I'm breaking all the rules now, or something. It's just so great.
Yeah.
But the film is best in its intimate, just the Bella and Edward scenes, like when she goes to the Cullen residence for the first time, and they have that exchange in his bedroom / non-bedroom because he doesn't sleep. Yeah. And they listen to the Debussy together.
The music. Yeah.
That's really nice. That's great acting from them both. Whereas the film certainly takes... I actually wonder whether it was shot in relatively chronological order with the script, because Robert Pattinson's accent takes a while to settle.
I have noticed.
If you watch it again in that scene that you're talking about in the biology lab, I do not know what nationality that man is pretending to be. And it takes a while. So, and the film isn't really sure at that point what they're doing with his hair. It's almost like that scene was the sort of...
An early shot, maybe.
An early one, yeah. And then it just kind of kept going. But in terms of something that actually predated the whole film release was, do you remember the music video was released for Decode?
Yes.
Tell me about your feelings towards that, Madeline.
Oh, I love that song. And I mean, definitely already was a fan of Paramore before that song came out. So yes, very excited to see that name kind of pop up alongside Another Obsession. And that song is epic. It's it's got this, it captures the mood. Again, that similar mood of the trailer. It's got this kind of, epic bigness, but also a kind of sadness and kind of depth that really captures Twilight. Love that. And the music video had that same kind of color scheme, but with Hayley Williams's amazing dark red hair, just like clashing through it. Loved it.
I couldn't believe when Paramore was announced as like the soundtrack or like the key lead song, because that was the ultimate slam dunk for me. Like that was a melding of two fandoms. It was something we already loved. A little bit like in the way that Robert Pattinson had been borrowed from the pre-existing Harry Potter fandom. I couldn't believe that, it was such a coup to get Hayley Williams and Paramore to do the big title song. And the music video for Decode actually maybe in my head replaces the trailer, because it had so much footage from the movie.
It did, yeah.
That must have been my most watched video.
I remember the like dark green of the forests a lot in that video.
Yep. This was back in the day where we watched a lot of music channel TV. So it was like on Kerrang TV. This is now the area where really only Madeline and I hung out. This is moving away from the Twilight fandom and into something else. But it was, for months, it was like the number one rock. And that must have been an interesting space for it to occupy, because Twilight was this girly pop culture thing.
It wasn't cool in that, or like kind of underground. It was mainstream and popular with girls.
And yet it was above like some of the boy rock bands on Kerrang!
On the charts.
Were completely overtaken by Hayley Williams in a forest, singing about loving a vampire, which I just thought was completely wonderful. I also it was of such a time for me because it dominated our sixth form experience. So did the sequels, and they just kept coming. Like the books were released in quick succession, the films were released in quick succession, so it kept you on this drug for all the way through to the end. And we're not going to do a deep dive into the other books, but how do you feel, just loosely, that the other books compare for you to the first one?
I feel like over time they got slightly less and less good.
Absolutely agree.
I remember continuing to like New Moon. You got the bit of the kind of love triangle stuff coming in, but obviously Jacob's never going to compare to Edward, so like what's even the point? But you got still a bit more intrigue, and then it kind of got weirder and weirder and more like separate from that initial, like what we were obsessed with in the initial idea, which was just the obsession with Edward, the intrigue, the kind of darkness. As soon as you start bringing in this like big epic battles and like weddings and babies, you've kind of like gotten away from what was so kind of what was so intriguing about the first book.
I passionately, vehemently agree with you. The Twilight saga to me is just typified by like a decline, basically, in quality, in my interest in it, in where I wanted to see it go. It's one of the ones for me that, in an incredibly vain, self-centered moment, I feel almost irrationally angry that I didn't get to carry the series on and think, I would have done something so much better with this. It fundamentally went in a direction that lost me.
Yeah,
as a teenage.
I mean, you definitely read it all and watched all the films, and
I read it all, but like, I think it would probably be fair to say that a lot of the reason we continued reading was because we wanted a certain element of the plot fulfilled that was withheld for multiple books. Dear listener, if you're not familiar with the Twilight saga, Bella and Edward do not consummate their relationship until a far later stage in the book. Which I'm sure was a brilliant marketing ploy by whoever sat down with Stephanie Meyer.
Well, also it's probably worth bringing up that Stephanie Meyer was, or is, Mormon, very religious, and so part of the plot of this was that they wouldn't consummate their relationship until they got married, which meant we had to have a marriage plot before we could ever actually get the satisfaction that we were looking for in this whole situation.
Maybe this is a really timely moment to go into the first of our categories.
Absolutely.
What is that category, Madeline?
The thermometer.
The thermometer.
How many degrees out of 100 would you say that Twilight is in terms of its hotness?
So, book one and film one in isolation.
Yep.
So incredibly hot.
Yeah.
Like, at the time, this registered on the hotness scale for me at like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Are we going out of 100?
Yeah.
100 being the top.
100 is the top.
This was probably the hottest thing at the time.
Yeah.
And not because it had explicit content, it didn't at all. Especially that first book. But it was the ultimate example of the slow burn romance of the... Did he touch my hand? Did I touch your hand? Who looked at who? Who breathed on whose neck? It was so... This book was so incredibly hormonal and horny with very little happening at the time.
Yeah.
And the film... And I was worried about the film before it came out and its ability to capture that. But the film captured it, if not made it even hotter.
Yeah.
And I mean, how much of that do you think was to do with the chemistry between Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart?
I don't know. I think both of them, I think it worked, but actually I think I was definitely still more taken with the chemistry in the book than the film.
Yeah.
I think I thought they did it well in the film, but overall the romance and the kind of sexual tension was more for me in like flipping through the pages and this kind of like that slow feeling. I think I was more obsessed with it in the book than the film.
Yeah, and that's become like the slow burn has become one of those well recognized book traits now. But this was the masterclass in how to do teenage slow burn. And I thought it was pretty scorchio. What would you rate it out of on the thermometer scale?
I mean it's going to be taking an 85 or a 90 for me, I think.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to confess my sins about the eventual consummation of that relationship?
I was hoping that you would.
So frustrated was I in this. I mean, the slow burn I wasn't frustrated by. I was enjoying it in the first book, and you're getting there and you get to the second book. I think they don't even get married until the third book, maybe
It takes
the fourth?
It
no,
takes a
third.
minute.
Anyway, it took so long. And that was part of the thrill at the beginning. But by the end, you're like, well, if you're going to take this long, we need the payoff. We need and this we were reading these. The first couple of books would have been out when we were in sixth form. We were like, we want the payoff, the ending that we were looking for.
Yeah.
And what actually happens is they get married, and we know they've discussed it in great detail that they are not going to have sex until they get married, until their wedding night.
Such great detail.
So much detail of the discussion. They've all agreed, and and Edward's like, oh, I couldn't possibly until we're married because I might, my overwhelming power as a vampire might harm you, and all these kind of other allegories to, virginity and sex and all that. So we get to the wedding. The wedding's beautiful. It's fine. We'll wait.
We're skipping through it.
They fly off to some island in the middle of is it the Caribbean or the Pacific Ocean or something? Some remote island for their honeymoon, and it's the night, and we're like, oh my god, this must be the moment. This is going to be it. Finally, all of this tension is going to build to something in this book, and they walk out into the water. On the island, into the sea, and cut to the next morning. And I was furious. I was there like, what? Go back, forward, back, forward. Where is, because the first book was so sexy, right? It like, in its non-explicitness, was extremely erotic and sexy to, a 17-year-old mind, that you just think, well, of course we're going to get to that moment. It's not like books that for 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds don't have sex in them. That's completely normal. So you think you're going to get there, and it just completely didn't. Do you remember that moment?
I'm so angry about it to this day that I'm having to contain my rage. I thought I had missed a page, or that the pages were sellotaped together, or that I had somehow been missold a sort of PG edition of this book, and also saw other people going through this experience at the same time, because you're right, the fourth book came out in the last year of school, and everybody had pre-ordered it.
Yeah, we read it at the same time.
Total nerds that we are, and I remember seeing people, sitting in a kind of sitting in between coats in the cloakroom, devouring it to get to this page. The fourth book is the longest. I mean, it's a doorstop. It's massive. And this, to me, is the key structural failing of the whole Twilight saga. It sounds so silly, but it's because it was set up to be an erotic epic, and it was so deeply unsexy at the end. By the end, not only is there zero detail on what actually happens, it's almost embarrassingly scant. They go into the sea, and then it's fade to black. And then from there, it just descends into... I mean, everybody feels how they want to feel about it, but I was checked out by the time we got into the Bella is immediately pregnant
with the baby,
Renesmee. I just had stopped. It had stopped being the same book to me.
Yeah.
But what did you do to rectify this situation?
Well, this is where the confession comes, which is that I was, familiar with the kind of fan fiction world, but I've never written that kind of stuff before. But I took it upon myself to write the sex scene. And I mean, I must have just been inspired, because I was just like, I could just write this. It's just obvious what happens. I know exactly how this is going down. I just wrote the details, took them from the sea back into the bedroom, and wrote the scene that should have existed in the book in the first place. Printed it out on A4 paper for all of our classmates and friends to read, and handed it out to everyone. It was like, this is what you were looking for. Have at it.
This was an iconic day. I remember this so vividly. An iconic day because you were quite surreptitious about it.
I just wrote it.
But you didn't sort of say, guys, I don't worry, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to go do this. It will be in your homework tray tomorrow. Instead, you sort of appeared at my elbow in the common room with this, and you had folded it minutely. You'd folded it into this tiny, tiny sort of parcel. And it's important to say that it was not just one page of A4. I think it was a couple of pages.
Yeah. You need a few to.
You need a few to do it justice. And you had written on it some sort of instruction like, to be read at home. Like, do not read this now. And I remember pocketing this, like, illicit note, thinking, what is this? And then was like, Schmaufton, you are a genius. This is the greatest thing that I have ever read. And you know what? It wasn't bad.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. It's probably the best thing I ever actually wrote.
Its literary quality is actually to be commended.
I think I was trying to get Stephanie Meyer's style.
You did.
But, carry it on. Yeah.
You did. And speaking of sort of memorabilia from our early years, I have got that at home.
Nice.
I have definitely got your first foray into... a sort of mini novel, a short story, let's call it that.
Well, we should always, while we're still on the topic of the thermometer, not forget that 50 Shades of Grey started in exactly this way as a Twilight fan fiction. That was exactly what 50 Shades of Grey was.
Yep.
And then became the BDSM epic success of our time.
I love that chain of geekery where... like, one obsession breeds the fan fiction that sort of gives birth to the next one, because like Sarah J Maas starts off as a fan fiction writer, and actually that's a useful comparison, because there are so many book series that I will defend to the hilt as getting progressively better, progressively more epic, progressively hotter, progressively more sophisticated, but this ain't it.
No.
It's almost remarkable that the Twilight saga is given the term saga, because I'm going to make a case, and I'm going to get some hate for this, that Twilight should have been one book, and it should have been a standalone, a bit like The Host, that is Stephanie Meyer's earlier book.
It's also great.
Also great. And part of the joy of Twilight was that the world was contained. That it was very, very... it had a very particular setting. It was very much of a place. And that you really had a relatively satisfying conclusion to Bella and Edward's relationship by the end of the first book. It was suggested that she was going to stay in Forks, they were going to be together, and that there it end. And I could have left it there. But the decision to have it go on meant that I could feel Stephanie Meyer trying to open it up to this more epic world. If we got the Volturi, there's a bit where they go to Venice. But to me, that was completely at odds with all the magic of the first book. That was this very situated, slow, soporific, who looks at who sort of thing. And it did not work for me as it went on.
So while we're on that, how would you rate the badassery of Twilight?
Ooh, middling to low.
Yeah.
It is not badass. That's not what it's about. There are, there's a fight scene, and there is a sense of threat, but, and it's funny that we're actually, I certainly am rating it fairly low, because this is about blood-sucking demons who have the potential to terrorize a town. Like, the same monsters operate in other spheres, like Underworld, where it's really badass. And yet, this is not that. The vampires go to high school. They collect graduation caps.
I think the thing that typifies the badassery level as low is the fact that the thing that happens when vampires go in the sun is they sparkle. They just sparkle.
Edward twinkles.
Yeah.
You're so right.
That's the kind of level of badassery that Twilight is at. And that's okay.
That's right. It's not even like in Buffy, where if the vampires sort of stick their hand in the sun.
Yeah, regular vampire law is that
they combust.
They burn up. No, they just twinkle.
Oh, I suppose that, I imagine that Stephanie Meyer could not have constructed the plot line if it was that Edward couldn't be outside in the dead.
Of course,
we would have been rather limited.
Yeah.
But you're right, we get sparkly, twinkly vampires.
Which is fine.
But
it's not badass.
No. She does try. Like, there's, they get some cool cars, and there is a fight scene, and they move quickly. They can run really fast.
They can run really fast.
Jump really high. They're basically versions. They're really good-looking Power Rangers. Is the Cullens, which is what you were talking about with the different powers. But no, badass. It is not.
How about then our obsession fuel tank? How full is that tank?
This is a tough one for me because. Well, I don't know, you go. What do you think? How obsession fuel is your tank on Twilight?
I think if we're talking, how much can you dig into the lore? How much can you really, pull out of this world and kind of fall into, a kind of obsession in that way? Is going to be, a quarter tank. There's not a lot to learn about the world. Once you learn the rules of how these vampires work, you're kind of there. And when you do get into more lore in the later books, you kind of don't care. But if we're talking obsession fuel for a teenage heart, it's 100% full.
It's so full.
It's so full.
That's such a difficult kind of question to think about with Twilight, because that's it. If we think about, can we really get into maps and languages, or specifically how do the powers that the Cullens have work?
Nobody cares.
Well, the thing is, I care, but it wasn't about that.
No.
It was not about that. So there would be barely any drops of petrol at the bottom of this tank. But you're so right. When we think about how obsessive were we about this, it had everything. It was completely set up to be an obsession. The movie posters, the fact they had Paramore do the soundtrack, the quick release of these films and obsessions. I actually felt like this was a time period defined by Twilight premiere after Twilight premiere after Twilight premiere after book after book after book. And it just kept us in, you've used that phrase, chokehold.
Yeah.
It absolutely did. Yeah. I brought my copy of Twilight to my university interviews, because it, to me, had become emblematic of who I was at that moment. I did not talk about it in my interviews, because that probably wouldn't have been appreciated. But I remember going back to the little room that I had to stay in, kind of gripping my copy and thinking, but this is who I am. This is really who I am. I brought this book with me to make me feel safe and at home and connected to my core self.
Aww.
And the fact that it was Twilight, I think really, really says something. But yeah, it created an obsession beyond obsessions for us. What's our next category? Or are we on USP?
I think that's it, yeah.
Okay, Madeline, what is your like overarching, like iconic takeaway moment from this book or film?
Well, I think I know what you're going to say, so I might have to choose something else.
Oh, I was torn. If you say the one I'm going to say, I've got a backup.
All right. Well, I'm going to say then, from the movies,
Yep.
the baseball scene.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's playing Muse in the background. It's like epically shot and filmed with these like fast scenes. It became iconic immediately. Like as soon as you walked out, you went, that was the coolest thing ever. Like that was how that scene felt. And it wasn't even some, maybe it was in the books. I don't know. Maybe they played baseball. It might have been created just for the film. And it was amazing. And yeah, combined that kind of epic awesomeness of the music with the powers and the kind of Bella feeling overwhelmed by the whole situation at the same time.
Yeah,
that's my iconic moment.
That was absolutely mine as well.
Yeah.
And I think that would be, I hope people be in universal agreement that is the apex of that film.
Yeah.
The Muse soundtrack. It's Supermassive Black Hole, isn't it?
It's basically choreographed.
Yeah.
It's like a music video or a dance performance.
Yeah, and again, the special effects are stupid.
Yeah.
They're like leaping in the air, there's lightning strikes in the background. But when I watched it the other day, I got genuine goosebumps. I filmed my own television and sent it to you. Like, look, it's still so
good.
freaking cool, this sequence. It's amazing. And we could do a whole nother discussion that we don't have time for about the way the Twilight film uses music, which again tapped into. It was so good. That soundtrack is so perfectly curated.
Yeah.
No, I'm tempted to go into it, but I'm not going to. So I will have to go to my second choice best moment, which is in the books and is in the films, but is definitely one of the best kiss scenes, I think, of all time in cinema. And just has a really unique quality to it, which is, we all know what I'm talking about. It's the in Bella's bedroom. It's their first kiss. And it just has a unique set of dynamics at play for what is effectively a teen kiss.
Yeah.
Very, very different from, we talked about the writer having done something like Step Up or The OC or all of these. This is like a semi-awkward, but also incredibly steamy, slowly paced, beautifully shot, beautifully lit scene that I could not look away from. And I remember my heart was beating in the cinema when I was watching this.
Yeah.
It was, I could not look away. It had me completely locked in.
Yeah.
And it remains one of the best. And they're both brilliant in it. It's acted so well. It's just, it's one of those things that looks so effortless, but also must have been so carefully choreographed.
Yeah.
And that scene, to me, that's one of the best. And then, of course, who can forget the brilliant pop culture moment of, is it the MTV Movie Awards, where Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart, and I think they were together at the time.
Yeah.
Do you remember they did that epic tease where they collect an award? I think they win Best Kiss.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
yeah.
they pretend that they're going to
kiss.
and this was everywhere. This drove people nuts. So the kiss scene itself almost had like a second life beyond the film.
And I think that's good that's our kind of like ending USP, because as much as the baseball was cool, really what our obsession with these books and films was about was that slow burn romance, the teenage angst and all of that. And yeah, you're right that really does typify that kind of feeling. And yeah, beautiful.
I, to this day, and tell me if you've got a suggestion for it, but I don't think it has been bettered.
Ooh.
That the slow burn teen paranormal YA romance.
Quite specific.
That's quite specific.
It's okay.
It's not a lot of it. No, but even then, it spawns so many other versions of it. But it is the seminal text And this will have to be something that, we say that this has very little literary value, Twilight. And I was too embarrassed to talk about it in a university context, etc. But I think give it 100 years or 200 years and you will not be able to understand gender politics of our era. You will not be able to understand what it was to be a millennial. And this will become a core text. Like, people will have to read, well, at least I think they should. Maybe they won't.
You might be going a little far, but
maybe they won't.
I understand where you're coming from. That's good.
There will be enough copies available of Twilight.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot go into a charity shop, on holidays where people like leave their books to be read.
Yes.
The number of copies of Twilight that are knocking about in the world, it's just going to be unavoidable for years.
Yeah.
So, no, this to us was the thing.